Hey everyone, Rob here from Daisho Tactical. We're doing a little bit of a podcast tonight with two friends of mine in the kind of tactical industry. We have Tyler here from Gun Near Strategic and Andy from Six is Clear. You guys want to take a moment to introduce yourselves? Tyler?
Sure. So yeah, I have a YouTube channel, Gungnir Strategic. My thing with my channel is I primarily focus on tactics and strategy beyond just general firearms content that you usually see, so reviews and shooting videos and so forth. It's not really my thing. I'm more focused on the tactics side of things, so that's what I do. So definitely be sure to check out my channel, Gungnir Strategic, if you haven't already.
And Andy.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, I just started the channel just recently, Six is Clear project, and my goal was basically I started the channel. The main motivation to that was to just try to get out some brief information of the topics at hand to multiple people interested in police work, civilian side, military, same kind of thing, tactics, firearms training. So kind of new to that Six is Clear project. If you guys want to check out the channel, I greatly appreciate it.
So kind of going from there, the question I want to ask Andy here, primarily in regards to his latest video, was what are some things that you see that you could call, I guess you could call them training scars, that you see happen on the square range that end up being problematic and scars and issues during force-on-force training. So, for example, I'll give you one of them, and in my opinion I see a lot, is people's inability, or I shouldn't say inability, but their reluctance to move when drawing or shooting, etc., particularly when drawing. Typically in most classes, they don't implement drawing and moving very much. If they do implement it, it's very limited. That's primarily due to safety concerns, right? If you have 20 people on the line, it's hard to implement that safely unless you want to break up the class, which of course extends the class. There's logistical problems with that. But regardless, you see a lot of static drawing, just using this as an example. And then when it carries over to force on force, you see that people who are in a position where they should be moving when they're drawing their pistol aren't. Like, some dude's charging you with a knife, why aren't you moving your feet? And it becomes a training scar. So that's one. So what are some other ones that you see along those lines?
Yeah, so I'd say probably one of the biggest ones that I know Rob and I see on quite a consistent basis is, first off, just the sheer basic manipulation of the firearm. I load it, I put it in battery, I go to press the trigger, click, and then immediately get the hand up. I need assistance. And right away, it's very simple, finger straight, tap rack. Solves about 90% of our malfunctions. So the immediate action stuff. When we want students to move, Rob and I, Rob is the patrol rifle coordinator for our respective agency. I'm the lead firearms coordinator. And we kind of go hand in hand with what he teaches on the rifle range and what I teach at our in-service for handgun. And we kind of mirror those two objectives. So if it's specifically for this year, we're doing a lot of threat recognition with cover. So they're getting multiple reps on different weapon systems, and which is a good thing at the end of the day. So we're doing specific stuff with cover where not just the movement thing, but on a flat range against a target that's not going to hurt you. We see people abuse cover all the time. They do not take the angles like they should. And we even talk about there on both platforms about how if this is versus another human being, they're going to tune you up. Or you're gonna basically pay for your inability to use this cover effectively. So the flat range training, it really depends on the individuals. When we have officers that have been on long enough to know better, and they still fret about our state qualification, which is very easy, they kind of just treat it like, well, I've been on so long that for this particular stage, which is very close to the threat, which is a target, that's not going to hurt you, I decide I'm going to take a knee because that's the way I've always done it. And then we do stuff where we're actually trying to teach them tactics, and they're still like, it's new, I don't like it, I'm not really comfortable with it. And I'm like, all I'm telling you to do is just change your elevation. It's not that hard, and it will, preserve your life if you try to use this in the real world. So yeah, I think the weapons manipulation, the movement not being taken seriously, They have in the back of their mind, I have to do this state shoot or the state qualification to pass, and then we try to give them actual real-world training reps. And we give context to everything we do. That's the magic word right there, is context, where we say, this is a flat range training with these elements. If you do this here, it 100% will transfer over here. Okay? And so, yeah, weapons manipulation, movement, the biggest thing, that's the pet peeve I talked about, is not knowing what's wrong with your gun and having an answer immediately. Immediate threats get dealt with immediately. Immediate problems with your handgun get dealt with immediately. Don't raise your hand. Not even if you have to go to the bathroom. Just go. We're adults here. And you're an adult in a profession where you're handling a firearm daily and you don't know. You click and you don't have an answer for it. That's a big issue. So it's stuff like that on a constant basis where, honestly, the thing, I'll wrap it up with this. The thing that we tell new and budding firearms instructors when we run them through a school is, I tell them, if anyone ever figures out how to make people give a shit, let me know, because we need to capture that unicorn and study it, because that's the one thing I can't figure out, is how do people, make people care more about what we're trying to do on a flat range versus force on force versus the real world. And that's usually where we're at.
Quick question regarding that. Do you think, because, again, you come from a law enforcement background, so these people, they're not necessarily paying out of pocket to come and train with you. They're being voluntold to come train with you, right? Do you think that is a larger issue in that context than it is in a civilian private side context, where people are spending their time and money to come train with whomever and learn whatever? Do you think they
Absolutely.
have more
Yes.
investment than in your context?
Yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah, yes.
100%. And it's mixed match there. Luckily, there's a division there, so it's not so heavy on the zero fuck stage. But the funny thing is with most cops, you could give them $1 million and they'd still bitch that you didn't give them a briefcase to take it to their car in, right? So it's, in one hand, they'll be like, we need to train. And then we're like, we're training today. Are we getting out early? It's like, well, what do you want? And so it's like, yes, you're voluntold to be here, and we're going to do some stuff, but they'll still find, something to bitch about. So absolutely, when they're voluntold, even though we put on one of the best training, I think we've had since we've been on, and Rob, interject please, is we had 2016 was counter ambush training because of obviously current events. All right, we had Dallas, we had Baton Rouge, we had New York City, and then pretty much it was everywhere, and it was clearly abundant that it was war on police. All right, we fast forward to 2019, we got vehicle CQB to our entire department. Both of those heavy sessions, which were absolutely life-saving curriculum, we still had cops in there bitching about, it's too hot, I'm sweaty, when are we taking breaks, what are we doing, and we're providing ammo. You're getting paid to shoot for free and might be able to save the person on your left or right, and they're still finding a way to complain. So yeah, it's always like that.
Yeah, so you're always in a law enforcement context. You're always going to have, and I'm sure it's the same way in the military, at the kind of the base level, is that you're going to have varying levels of motivation of your students, and some of them are just trying to check the box and get it done. Andy mentioned weapons manipulation. It's a freaking shit show. It irks me when people, your ability to operate this weapon is basically, your life, right? And my life and the life of every citizen in our city by extension. And something goes wrong with it, they get a click, and we get the stare at the side of the Glock, and then the hand up. Like, I got a question over here. They have no idea. And they don't care to know, and they don't care to get better, because they think, well, this is just happening here in the range. It won't happen in real life. I honestly think a lot of people just don't honestly think it's ever going to happen to them. They think it's never going to happen. And having been I've been in 5 officer-involved shootings. I've only shot 1. The other 4, I was just a witness. But I was right there when somebody else was doing it. And it does happen. It can happen, especially if you're, more aggressive officer looking for it. But even the officers that don't work that hard and are just, kind of clocking in and clocking out, shit happens and bad guys find you. And stuff happens and you get called to help, and people expect you to show up, being able to do something about it. I can't stress enough. It is frustrating on the instructor side of things how many absolute kind of become retired on duties. Retired on duty officers we have that are just putting their time in. It's kind of frustrating because they can really hold up the rest of the class, because we got to kind of train to the lowest common denominator. We can't just leave those folks behind. And on the rifle side, I teach a lot of rifle instructors, and when I'm teaching them, oh man, this person's in the class today, and their safety's garbage, and they shoot like shit, and blah blah blah, and they're just such a train wreck. And I say, yeah, that's who we're here for. And I hate that. Because believe me, I would love to just train with the good shooters, but the reality is the good shooters don't need us. The people who train don't need me. They don't need our skills. It's the ones that are an absolute shit show that actually need those are who we're here for. The ones that we're trying to get up to. Unfortunately, they're at the bare minimum. We're trying to get them up to above average. That's what we're trying to get them. Those are the ones who need our assistance and need our help. So it is kind of a struggle that I don't think Tyler, you see on your side of things, because you're people spending their own money coming to a private class that are highly motivated. I would love to have that kind of student base. Generally, on the rifle side of things, people they got to spend their own money and buy their own rifles, so to some degree they want to be there. So things are better there on that side. But what Andy does is more in service. Like, hey, everybody's taking this training, so it can be more difficult on his side of the house.
Do you think? So this would be kind of an interesting question for both of you. So going back to my experience, so like I said in the very beginning of this, my first classes when it came to CCW in this case was force on force. Now, I've talked with a bunch of other instructors on this because I feel like, in my personal opinion, if people took force on force as their first class and learned how serious this is and get kind of a taste of what it actually feels like, they would take their training more seriously than the other way around, where they take a bunch of classes and then do force on force. Because for me, when I had those force on force experiences, I did quite well because I took it seriously before I ever even took those classes. But it made it more real for me, and it made me want to not only be better but also seek out more training. And it also gave me at least the very beginning of a bullshit detector, in terms of, like, I know the stress levels that are going to be applied to you, even just on a force on force, is significantly lower than an actual event. And it gave me, again, that meter to read and that perspective of know what I'm being taught, will this actually apply in a very stressful environment? Do you think, I'm not saying this would ever actually happen, but if you took these officers and put them in a force-on-force scenario or scenarios and made it real for them, that they would take it more seriously? Or do you think that wouldn't matter?
So I think the one thing is we actually see a lot of stress already come out from a lot of people when they know that an in-service is coming up that's going to be heavy on the force-on-force side, because they dread the pain, and they also dread that their proficiency level, which is way down here, I'm already off the camera, it's that low, right? They know it's going to be tested, and it's not going to do very well. So they're already shit in the bed. I'm going to have painful stuff shot at me, and I'm already know that I don't really have an answer for it, because they've already put that blanket of complacency on. I like what you said too about Rob and I have messed around with introducing force on force, even though it might be a little bit minuscule early, to some recruits and things like that. And obviously, whether civilian class, law enforcement, military, people have to come into a course, with a base level of weapons handling. You can't just throw them in the mix that never shot a gun before and give them force on force. You'd probably see some lackluster reactions there, obviously. But we try to start creeping it in a little bit early, and then come back and revisit and say, hey, remember what you did here? Now let's look at this one. We're in active killer training now. How do you feel? Pretty good. All right. So we've built a lot on that. But yeah, the in-service side, and we're actually going to start doing, I'll let Rob chime in on this for the rifle side. We're going to start doing a little bit more force on force with rifle as well, on top of live fire, which I think is necessary and overdue. And I think you'll still get people that the rifle cadre, for the most part, I think Rob will agree, a little bit more squared away. A little bit more squared away and locked in than the in-service crowd. Because it's not a mandatory weapon system, but you still get some people that they dust the rifle off once a year to do the research, and they kind of barely scrape by. So I think once you start introducing force and force there, you'll see some good stuff. But yeah, you will absolutely have some people stressing out before the first rounds are even fired.
Yeah, the rifle side that's going to be a heavy lift. It's going to be manpower intensive. Got to get the UTM bolts, got to get the UTM rounds. Yeah, that's probably next year, but I'm looking forward to it. But I think we're going to definitely see, people come to their rifle training day. They get one a year, and they're pretty excited to be there. It's a day away from their normal job, and they get to have fun. They get to shoot about 350 rounds, and they have fun with it. And honestly, the qual is not particularly hard. I try to keep it fresh and new. I've been doing a lot of stuff with the cover and angles and stuff. But the second I add in force on force, like some serious force on force training, I think that anxiety level is just going to peak. The people, there's going to be the ones that want to do it because they're excited, because they're aggressive, and they're the ones that are going to be like, oh fuck, I didn't want to do this, I just didn't want to go to work today. And we just always have those folks, and once again, those are the ones we're here for, because honestly, those are the ones that end up in the freaking shootings more often than not, but just by dumb luck. It's not the hard trainers. But force on force is one of the things. As soon as we can do it, me and Andy, he's the lead firearms coordinator. I just kind of, on the recruit side, I just kind of ride his coattails, and we always joke that he really works really hard and sets up everything really thoroughly and does a lot of pre-planning on his classes. And I just kind of show up like Kramer and Seinfeld at the last minute, just stumble through the door and like, what do we teach? So, but I've always pushed force on force early. As soon as they have a handgun, they did one, day one, they know what end the bullets come out of and they know how to pull the trigger. Sweet. Put them in a force on force scenario, because I want them to see. We have a scenario in particular that we have them go through pretty early, where it's the radio call is armed party in a Walmart parking lot, go. And they literally come to the door, the person turns, looks at them, there's a gun in their waistband, they draw it and immediately start shooting. And it's not really set up for failure, but I just want them to see how fast it can happen. Mm-hmm. And that scenario in particular is eye-opening for lots of recruits. We have recruits that go code black, and honestly, I think they have like some PTSD from that scenario, because we had one recruit in particular. She got hit right in the face mask, and it like zipped up in the face mask, and it rattled her for quite a while. And I'm literally, they put the guy down. The other officer, shot him quite a bit. And I said, hey, what's important? What do you need to do? What do you need to do? And I'm, kind of getting them through it. But I think it's important that we get them getting shot at early, so they can see this is why we're doing it. This is why we're doing this thing, because I want you to learn these basic skills so you can apply them when it's life and death later.
This isn't a fantasy. This can happen.
You guys can both probably agree, too, because you've probably seen it on numerous levels. The CQB in a flat range with blue guns, and then CQB against humans that are actually shooting projectiles. And if you have people that are not doing CQB correctly, you see a difference on those two platforms.
Yeah.
100%.
You even see that, too, when, for example, let's just pretend like you're doing a CQB1 or a day one CQB, and you get people going fairly smoothly through the shoot house, whatever. And then, okay, now we're going to do this, and there's going to be potentially a guy in here who is, going to be a threat. And even just the stress of there's now going to be someone in here with a blue gun who might shoot at me. They don't even get to the person. It just falls apart because they got this thing in the back of their mind. There's someone in here who's going to shoot me.
Yes.
And then you just see the stress levels collapse everything.
We have recruits all the time put on all their Sims gear, and we see there's gonna be a live role player in there shooting at you, and there's not. It's just a fuck with them just to get their stress level up. Yeah, we do it all the time. We'll have a lot of times our bad guys are shooting blanks. The recruits don't know it. We've had entire recruit classes go through a scenario and not realize that they were blanks.
Yep.
I don't know why the guy didn't hit me. It's because he's shooting blanks, dumbass. But They don't know that. We're trying to induce that stress. That's what we want is the stress. So
It's interesting because I remember going back to those first set of classes I did. At the time, they had a very small facility. This was Critical Defense Institute, if people are ever curious, in New Hampshire. So they had a very small facility, very small shoot house, all that. Still fantastic training, but at the time they were very small. And so when other people were going through their scenarios, everyone else was basically sitting in the other room just listening to it. So all you heard was the Op 4, which were the instructors, right, screaming and yelling and people screaming, guns going off, sim guns going off, right? And you could just see everybody in the room listening to this just go white. Like, oh no. And of course it was just scenario after scenario because they would take you and you'd do like 3 or 4 scenarios in a row. And then, they'd come walking out and be like, point at you, go, you're next, So that was just hearing the scenarios made people's stress levels skyrocket, which was just interesting to watch,